Thor 2. Oy, I gotta admit, when I started this whole thing, I was looking more forward to watching Thor 2 than I was looking forward to watching Thor. Those are the two big ones I was, like, not really interested in watching again. Also, Ant-Man. We'll get there when we get there with Ant-Man. Thor 2 is a more interesting watch than Thor 1, and I remembered it being more interesting, or at least being a bigger mess, therefore being more interesting. Yeah, Thor's a better movie. This is, interestingly enough, the lowest rated Marvel film on Rotten Tomatoes. It got a 66, so technically still fresh, I think. I don't know how their metrics work, but like, yeah, people didn't like this one. I don't like it either. It's probably the worst of the Marvel movies. I wouldn't necessarily call it a bad movie. The way my recommendation rating works is 5 out of 10 is right down the middle. I saw a movie. So stuff like Solo, that's a 5 out of 10. Kind of Ant-Man, 5 out of 10. If it's below a 5, then it's like, I don't really recommend this, barring very specific, like, shitty horror movie fans. If it's above a 5 out of 10, it's a recommendation. It's worth watching, and then obviously the higher up you go, the more I recommend it. That's kind of how this works. I can't quite call this a 4. 4 out of 10. It's about a 5, maybe a 6, even though Thor was only a 5, because it tries harder. I don't know. Thor 2. So, when we last saw Thor, he was taking Loki back to Asgard, and that was a really interesting setup. Like, okay, fuck. Thor has learned a lot, he's got his brother, what the hell. And then the trailers looked really cool, you know. The big complaint I had with the first Thor was, I don't give a shit about this little town in New Mexico. You introduced this amazing universe with 9 realms and Asgard, and then we spend the whole time hanging out in buttfuck nowhere, New Mexico. The trailers for Thor 2 really made it look like it was going to take place places other than Earth. Looked like we were going to see a lot of action. It looked bigger and badder and cooler. And darker, but in a good way. I mean, the movie's called The Dark World. Upon watching it again, and this is interesting because I don't think Zack Snyder had come onto the scene quite yet, it feels very Zack Snyder-y, this movie, in a visual way. The whole thing, I mean, look at the background. Like, this is the Blu-ray menu. The whole movie is fucking, like, just dingy and dirty and grimy. Like, it doesn't look cool. Even when you're on Asgard, it's not pleasant to look at. And the story isn't really, like, a dark story full of dramatic themes. It's kind of a silly little fucking one-off adventure. Like, if you think of the Thor movies kind of like Bond movies, which the third one really leans into that. There's a dog playing with a baseball. If you think of the Thor movies like Bond movies, like, hey, we know this guy, he's gonna have an adventure this time. The villains don't really matter, it's just what can we put our hero through. Then this one kind of works. Where it doesn't work is that they try to add emotion to it. Like, they try to add a love story to it and yada yada yada. So the plot of this fucking thing is that Jane has been studying science, and the harmonic convergence is happening. And the harmonic convergence, for those who aren't big old geeks, is it's a celestial event where planets line up with one another, or galaxies line up with one another, or whatever, to form like a straight line. In this case, it's the 9 realms themselves. And while she's studying that, she goes through a portal to a different planet and finds the ether, which, you know, is an infinity stone. They reveal that at the end. And the ether infects her body, and Thor's like, oh fuck, I gotta go save my girlfriend, and, you know, we're off to the races. The bad guy wants the ether. He's a dark elf, he's from the dark world. The last time harmonic convergence happened, God, this is such a convoluted nonsense plot, but not in a fun way. The last time harmonic convergence happened, the dark elves almost conquered the galaxy, because before the Big Bang, I guess, they don't really say. They didn't say before the universe, which had a beginning and will have an end. Before the beginning of the universe, it was the time of darkness, and the Dark Elves ruled. So the last time harmonic convergence happened, the Dark Elves were like, we want darkness back. And Odin's father, Thor's granddad, killed damn near all of them, and stole the ether, which they can't destroy because it's a fucking infinity stone, you can't destroy those. And now, 5,000 years later, Malekith's been hanging out in space. It's kind of like the plot to the Star Trek reboot, where the fucking Romulans have been hanging out waiting to get a chance to get their revenge. So they've been hanging out in space, fucking Jane Foster finds it, they gotta track her down because they want to do bad things to the universe. Right away in describing that plot, you might think, okay, sure, there's some high stakes. The universe is in jeopardy. We don't really do that. It really feels more like Thor's mad at his girlfriend, or mad about his girlfriend being kidnapped, And when the initial attack on Asgard happens, Thor's mother dies, because Thor's having a bad time. For a dude who's been alive for centuries, this last 20 years or so is a bummer for him. His mother dies, and then that's Loki's big motivation, is I want revenge for my mother. Like, it doesn't really feel like we have to save the universe all that much. The only one who really feels interested in saving the universe is Jane Foster, Natalie Portman. Okay, so I'll be honest. The time crunch of getting these movies out 3 times per week, getting these reviews out, has been catching up with me just because the movies are long, I work 9 hours a day, and then I gotta talk about them, and I gotta upload them. It's, kind of a bit of a time commitment. But, I'm cool with that. This one is the bummer one that no one in my world wants to watch with me. As I'm watching these movies, I've had, companions on the couch, roommates, friends, whatever. The dog is a constant companion. This is the one where no one gives a fuck. And I didn't want to waste my whole evening on Thor 2. So this is the first time, and probably the last, where I watched this in 2 sittings. This morning before work, I watched the first 40 minutes, and I was pleasantly like, hey, I actually am enjoying this. This movie kind of works. I know it's going to go off the deep end. I remember what happens, but for right now, I'm kind of digging this. Maybe I judged it too harshly at the time. Maybe the stupid story things I remember are going to be done better. I went to work, came home, put it back on, and oh my god. The second hour of this movie is where we lose it. The first hour is kind of bright and fun. We see Thor off adventuring. Since the destruction of the Rainbow Bridge, and since Loki invading Earth, the 9 realms have been in chaos, and at war with each other, kind of clutching for power because Asgard can't intervene. Thor has been traveling around trying to right the wrongs of the universe. He's been... Dog's playing with a stuffed whale. He's been traveling around being a good king. He's been fighting for justice, fighting for peace, settling disputes, mediating conflicts, that kind of stuff. In the opening sequence, he destroys a big rock monster, like a big thing made of rocks, and he whacks it with his hammer and it goes flying in the air. When the big rock monster showed up, I have to admit, the first thing I thought in my head was, hey, I'm Kolg. Me and these guys are going to get a ship, and we're going to fly away. I don't know if Korg is related to the rock monster that Thor destroys in this one, but it's fun. We see an adventure. Even the stuff on Earth, it's not too much. They're in London because of Eric Selvig, the scientist from the Avengers and from Thor, took them there. For some reason, Darcy's still around. Kat Dennings. But, it's fine. It's minimal. Mostly what's going on is Thor is ready to be king, doesn't want to be king. Odin thinks that that's his duty. Thor knows he can't go back to Earth because he's got so much work to do in fixing everything, but is forced to intervene and go to Earth because Jane Foster vanishes. Odin, or Heimdall, can't see her when she goes to that portal. So Thor's got to go get her. He finds her, takes her back to Asgard immediately, which is really interesting. It's reverse fish out of water kind of stuff. It's cheesy, but it kind of works. Natalie Portman's a good actress. She has an Oscar, of course. I will say the biggest problem with the movie for me is the leaps the audience is supposed to make on behalf of the writers. These 2 characters didn't know each other for all that long. It doesn't feel like they're in love. Jane Foster was not a very strong character in the first movie, so this time around when she does stuff like slap Thor in the face because he was gone for so long, or punch Loki in the face because he blew up New York, it doesn't really, was she a fierce person? It feels like they want to make jokes, or they just wanted to slap Loki around. It doesn't really work. Same thing with what's her name? Frigga. Fucking Thor's mom. She's in it. Obviously losing your mother is a powerful thing, but there's a lot of scenes with the family here that don't really feel good, or feel earned. Thor's band of friends are in this again, what they call it, Jackie Chan, Gimli, fucking Robin Hood, and Sif. I remember her, she's cool. They're all in this movie again, and they still don't have character arcs. Sif in particular, whenever, when Jane Foster comes to Asgard, whenever Sif's on camera, there's a lot of them looking at each other side-eyed, hey, I love that guy. And Odin makes reference to, you ought to stay here, and don't focus on mortal woman because she's gonna die, and you ought to check out Sif, she's cool. And it feels like there's supposed to be a love triangle, never pays off at all. Not even a little bit. But the first hour or so works, and the initial attack on Asgard's a pretty stunning sequence. It's stupid. There's world-building issues, is the problem. These guys fight with swords and bows and arrows and shit like that, but when there's an invasion on their city, they're flying planes and laser blasts and big cannons. It's weird. But it's a fun sequence, so whatever. The funeral sequence for Thor's mother is really nice. It's very, very, Nordic. It's very Viking style over a waterfall. It's very pretty. And Loki is fucking the best part about this movie, hands down. He's hanging out in a jail cell. When he finds out his mother is dead, you can see it really fucking eats him up. When he goes to, be involved in the third act as Thor's partner, you can sense their brothership and their friendship and their freneminess a lot stronger than you can in the first Thor. And it does feel like, if you watch just the Thor movies back to back to back, you could very much see a progression between Thor and Loki. Problematically with Loki is the writing. He's hanging out in the prison, and there's a prison break, and he tells the bad guy, like, you might want to try the stairs on your left. I get that he's a god of mischief, but, like, the person he told to go up the stairs is the one who ends up killing his mother. I don't understand. And that's not really resolved. I mean, I guess he does get to kill the guy who killed his mother, but it doesn't feel satisfying at all. They do the thing, where, oh my god, Loki's been stabbed and he dies in Thor's arms and blah, blah, blah. It would be nice to believe that I can't remember. I'm pretty sure when I saw this in theaters and Loki died, I was like, nope. And I mean, it's well acted and stuff, but like, you just don't buy it. And then interestingly, the end of the movie is, Loki is on the throne. I don't know what the fuck happened to Odin, and we don't know what happens. Like, it's weird. Between this movie and the next Thor, does Thor never go back to Asgard? Is Loki just running shit for like 5 years? I don't know. It's really weird. They don't really resolve it. It's also frustrating because the final scene of the movie is a conversation between Thor and Odin about the nature of leadership and the nature of royalty and whether or not you've earned the responsibility to be a king. And it's, wonderfully acted by Hemsworth and Anthony Hopkins. And it fits thematically with those two's relationship, but that's not fucking Odin. They reveal that it's not Odin at the end of the scene. Like, Thor's character arc, it's weird. And how did fucking Loki get a hold of Thor? Or get a hold of Odin? How did he overpower him? I mean, in the next one we see that Odin's crazy. But like, yeah. So there's a lot of holes here that aren't resolved, that don't get resolved in other movies. Speaking of things that aren't resolved from other movies, Selvig, the scientist who Loki controls in the Avengers and is introduced in Thor, is batshit crazy bananas in this movie. Running around naked at Stonehenge. He's got science poles. And there's a nice line like, hey, are you okay? And he's like, I had a god in my head, I wouldn't recommend it. But then he's kind of fine by the end of the movie. Like, he's kind of not crazy anymore and nothing happens. It's another plot that goes nowhere. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So the first act or so, the setup, is fine. Then the stupid shit happens where there's a conflict about what to do. So, the Dark Elves attack Asgard. They kill Thor's mother. And Thor fights them off for a moment. So we know that, like, they're coming back. They need this fucking ether shit. We need this Infinity Stone. And it's still trapped in Natalie Portman's body. And Thor is like, we have to take this thing off-world. We're defenseless here. We have to take Jane off-world and bring the fight to him. And Odin's like, nope, don't do that. I'm fueled by revenge, and I'm clouded by anger. And I guess that's what they're going for, but it's not earned. Really. So Thor has to lead. And that's where you start going, like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, this is stupid. Why would you, like, be against this? Why would you be sending your soldiers to attack your son, who at the beginning of the movie you said should be king? By what you said, if you should just be the fucking king of Asgard right now, and it should be his rule, why aren't you trusting him? So, we get an escape sequence, they go to the Dark World, and that's when the movie fucking becomes a snooze fest. They hang on a boat for a while, talking about being brothers. It's nice, but it's also, who gives a shit? Jane Foster's asleep, literally, for like a third of this movie. Then we get the action sequence where Loki dies, and that's where I started to nod off. It's really boring. And then we get the big stupid climax in London, because I guess for harmonic convergence to be strongest, you have to be at the centralized point, and I guess that's Earth. And Malekith's idea, because he gets the fucking ether out of Jane, his plan is to, like, use it as a weapon, even though we know it's the mind. I mean, we know later on it's the reality stone. But it's not used as the reality stone in this movie. I don't know. This movie fucking has it just raises too many questions, to quote Batman Forever. It's not very good. Behind the scenes of this thing, Patty Jenkins, director of Wonder Woman, was apparently hired to direct. And she left because of creative differences, as had a director before her, as had Kenneth Branagh. So they were rushing this thing. That's what all the director said, was like, I don't have time to prep this. It's being really, really rushed. The screenplay, the story doesn't make a lot of sense. Yada, yada, yada. The story I heard back then is that Natalie Portman only signed on to do Thor 2 because she wanted to work with Patty Jenkins. And when Patty Jenkins was fired, she kind of revolted, which is why her character spends a lot of the movie in a coma kind of thing. The dude who directed it, Alan Taylor, is known for directing Game of Thrones episodes. The direction's fine for the most part. Aesthetically, it's not my thing. I've read interviews with him saying, you know, the biggest difference between me and Branagh is that his was so shiny and mine's really grimy and dirty. And I don't know, I just don't want to see that from a Thor movie. Like, the man wears a bright red cape. I want to see the bright red cape. And if you're going to tell a really dark Thor story, or with a movie with dark visuals, give me a dark story. Instead, if you look at Thor Ragnarok, which is a really fucked up, dark movie, it's like the most phantasmagorical, colorful, kaleidoscopic craziness. So, I don't know. I don't think the aesthetic makes sense. Malekith is the fucking lamest villain in the history of the MCU. Holy God. It's Eccleston, it's Doctor Who, the first Doctor Who from the reboot, Chris Eccleston. The acting is fine, I guess, but like his motivation is I'm going to destroy the world and the universe because that's what I want to do. He's not a good foil for the hero. Their fight at the end is stupid. It's fun because there's portals everywhere, so they fly from Earth through a portal to land on like Frost Giant Planet, and Thor is calling his hammer, which doesn't go through the portal and just starts flying into space. There's some fun jokes in there. But like the stakes are really low because you know Thor's gonna win. There's no emotional investment in this fight for him. I just gotta stop the bad guy. It also was weird because those sticks that fucking Selvig invented are planted around the climax zone, and fucking Natalie Portman's got like a remote control that can make portals happen. How? And then those sticks get embedded into Malekith's body. And I guess the idea is like you can kill the person that's got the ether inside of them. But, like, couldn't Thor just lightning that motherfucker to pieces? I mean, we saw him get a lightning blast to the face, and he was kind of fine, but, like, I don't understand this movie. The second half of this movie really goes off the fucking rails. When this movie aired, or when this movie premiered, I think everybody kind of went, damn it. I mean, I'm still going to go to the next one because Thor, I guess Thor just kind of sucks. The other big highlight of the movie is when Captain America shows up, sort of. Loki at one point is changing his appearance, talking to Thor, and he turns into Jane, he turns into Sif, he turns into like a random Asgardian soldier, and he also turns into Chris Hemsworth's Captain America, which is a cute scene, very, very funny, nice little cameo, but it does make you go like, okay, so fucking the universal harmonic convergence is happening. No one on Earth is studying this except for Jane Foster and the crazy dude who's running around fucking Stonehenge naked. And don't get me wrong, like, that's weird, but if the dude who was in the Avengers, who had a god in his head, starts running around claiming that something bad's gonna happen, I feel like S.H.I.E.L.D. would corner that guy and be like, we're probably crazy, but explain what's going on, because you're a scientist we trust. Nobody else on Earth, and nobody else in any of the other fucking realms, has been studying this thing and knows it's coming and is aware that, like, bad guys are coming. It doesn't... The climax of this movie is the end of the fucking universe, and none of the other fucking Avengers are gonna show up. It's weird. I don't like it. There is a moment towards the end where Thor's beating the bad guy, and he's lying on the ground, and a big fucking ship's gonna crash on him. He's passed out. And Jane is trying to drag him away, but she can't, so she lays on top of him because she loves him so much. And then as the thing is falling, you hear it about to crush them, and then the noise stops, and she opens her eyes. And, like, for a split second, you think, like, oh my god, they're gonna cut, and the Hulk's gonna be holding up that fucking ship, or something. Of course, no, just portal. He portaled it. You know, it's away. Yeah. So yeah, the big emotional through line of this movie, I don't know what this movie's about thematically, which is a bummer. Movies don't need to have themes to be fun. Like, Bond movies don't necessarily need to have themes. As just a standalone adventure, this thing would be fine if the villain mattered more, or if the stakes were smaller, honestly. This would probably work just fine. Or if it was really just about Thor, his father, his brother, and his mother, or something like that. Or if you really made the relationship matter a bit. I don't know. If the characters just had more fucking connection to each other, it would be a better movie. It's not. Those things don't happen. It's a little less than 2 hours. It's pretty boring. It's really not pleasant to look at. Aside from Loki doing stuff, I can't really recommend it. There's nothing here in terms of the other movies where you're like, yeah, you have to see it because it sets up this cool thing. Nope, not really. It just doesn't matter. Once again, I'm not even going to bother with the tag because the tag's completely unrelated. There are two tags in this movie. One in the middle shows the Collector, Benicio del Toro, which, that's cool. Hey, Guardians of the Galaxy. But at that point, Guardians of the Galaxy is 2 movies away and no one knows what the fuck it is. So that tag did nothing for me. They say the word Infinity Stone for the first time, so that's cool, I suppose. And then the tag at the end of the movie is Jane Foster and Thor make out. Who gives a shit? Who cares? No one cares about Thor and Jane Foster, which is why she's not in any of the movies ever again. This is definitely the worst of the Marvel movies. We'll see how I feel about Ant-Man again. It's objectively the worst. Whether or not I dislike it more, I'm not sure. Like, it's definitely a worse movie than the first Thor. I would rather watch this one than the first Thor, because at least it's got more Loki doing Loki shit in it. And more Hammer stuff. Like, at least Thor gets to be Thor the whole movie. First Thor, fucking Thor's running around with no superpowers for the whole thing. Fucking these Thor movies suck. Anyway, that's the end of this by my fucking rant about Thor 2 being kind of lame. Thor: The Dark World. God, is there anything else behind the scenes wise or anything? Oh yeah, I will mention the writing. There are 5 credited writers on this fucking thing, and that's very rarely a good sign. 2 of them are Marcus and McFeely, the guys who wrote all the Captain America movies and Infinity War. That's weird. They know how to tell stories. If you go read the production's history on Wikipedia, they're not mentioned at all other than being credited writers. Like, they talk about various writers doing various drafts of the scripts and various directors having stories. I don't know when they were brought in. I have a feeling that somewhere in the middle of production, they were like, this thing sucks, or maybe right before production, they were like, this thing doesn't really work, and they were brought in at the last second, kind of Joss Whedon on Justice League style, to rewrite, add jokes, and try to fix it as best they could. That's what it feels like to me, is they were kind of doctoring the script. Don't know for sure, but it definitely feels that way. So yeah, that's Thor: The Dark World. That movie's over with, thank fuck. Phase 2 is not off to a grand start. See you next time.